Kinneil House has many stories. Generations of Bowness children know about its ghost, a lady in white said to have plunged from the top floor to her death in the 17th century. But how many know that nearly 100 years earlier there was another dramatic scene involving the heir to the Hamilton dynasty himself, who escaped from his own father, also from an upper floor room, down a rope of knotted bedsheets? It was the night before Easter Sunday in 1562, just a few years after Kinneil House had been built by one of Scotland's most powerful noblemen, then known by his title of Duke of Châtellerault, or simply the Duke. The Duke's eldest son and heir, James Hamilton, the third Earl of Arran, was nearly 25, a daring soldier and a dashing figure, but a tragic one, as he was gradually going out of his mind. Since boyhood, he'd been used, including by his father, like a chess piece in power games between Scotland, England and France. Sometimes he'd even traumatically been held as a hostage in these political manoeuvres, or, when he was about 22, smuggled home by the English from France via Switzerland, in disguise. Why was he such a valuable piece to these rival powers? It was because he was a top contender one day to be King of Scotland, if anything were to happen to Mary Queen of Scots. His father, the Duke, was her cousin and next in line to the throne if she died or had no children. When Arran had been just 5 years old, his name had been offered to England as a possible husband to the future Queen Elizabeth I. Even in his early 20s, on that journey back from France, he had met Queen Elizabeth at Hampton Court near London, and by then the idea of a marriage to her had again come up. He had by now become an influential Protestant. Such a union could suit English ambitions over Scotland, and it suited the increasingly powerful figures who were heading the Scottish Protestant Reformation. Also as a boy, he had, alternatively, been considered a possible husband to Mary Queen of Scots herself. But she had then become betrothed to a far more powerful prospect, the future King of France. But at the beginning of 1561, the year before our drama at Kinneil, news had reached Scotland that French king, Francois II, had unexpectedly died of an ear infection, aged just 16. In the summer, the widowed Mary Queen of Scots then left France to return to rule properly over her own Scotland, herself still aged only 18, and once again single. So young Arran's own chances of marriage to Mary suddenly revived, and he himself became obsessed by the idea. He had persuaded himself that the Queen of Scotland was to be no one else's wife but his, a French observer once wrote. Was it not his destiny? He sent her a ring, it was said. Unfortunately, he was again disappointed. Mary rejected him. Many forces were at play, not least he was now a leader among John Knox's Protestant reformers. She was Catholic, aligned with France and other great Catholic powers. Other suitors were gathering around her. She and her supporters were suspicious that he was in league with Queen Elizabeth and the English. There was another minor detail. Mary disliked Arran and didn't trust him, so an enemy at court told him. "You are the man most hated of any man with the Queen." There were rumours that Arran might even try to kidnap her, and Mary boosted her security. Over the winter of 1561, Arran's personal strifes began to unhinge him. In February 1562, he appears to have fallen sick and suffered a mental breakdown. The English agent in Scotland, Thomas Randolph, sent gossipy dispatches to Queen Elizabeth in London, which give us all the details of the story. Arran became so drowned in dreams, and so feedeth himself with fantasies, that either men fear that he will fall into some dangerous and incurable sickness, or one day some made part that will bring himself to mischief. Another historian says that at one point Arran called for a saw to cut off his own legs, or a knife to slash his wrists. And so, by Easter weekend, Arran was staying at Kinneil when his father confronted him about further wild plots and imaginings, into which the father's name and his reputation with the Queen had now been dragged. This put the Duke into such a rage that he would have slain his son. Arran retired to, or was confined in, an upper room. After writing a message in code for his servant to deliver to an ally, he escaped out of his chamber with cords made of the sheets of his bed, blankets, and other things. Wearing his doublet and hose, he climbed down 30 fathoms, more than 50 metres, so perhaps all the way down to the shoreline. Starting through the night, he then travelled on foot and in disguise all the way round the Firth of Forth, until the morning of Easter Tuesday, when he turned up, exhausted, at Hawlyard's Castle near Kirkcaldy. But there his condition worsened. Whether it was fear of his life from his father, lack of sleep or meat, after he had taken some rest he began to rave and speak strange purposes, as of devils, witches, and such like, fearing that all men about came to kill him. He continued to insist on being Queen Mary's husband. His father, the Duke, stayed for a while at Kinneil, and was distraught. He laments sore that his son is out of his wits. He had said before that he had rather see all the children he hath dead at his foot than that his son the Earl should be sick. It was rumoured that Arran had gone mad twice before, and had perhaps inherited a mental instability from his mother and aunts, who are indeed at certain times, or the most parts of the year, distempered with an unquiet humour. Nearly 3 weeks later, his father, the Duke, summoned the courage to show himself at the royal court in St. Andrews, where he met the Queen privately in the evening, and persuaded her of his own innocence. This moved her not a little, but others pitied his case, to see the old man's tears trickling from his cheeks, as if he had been a child beaten. However, young Arran's fall from grace was perhaps convenient for the Queen, and others who wanted him out of the way. Thomas Randolph wrote that his friends are ashamed of him, and wish him out of the world. His enemies rejoice, and wish him worse than they know how to procure him. Arran was declared insane, and imprisoned in Edinburgh Castle. Though occasionally much better, he was to stay there for 4 years, but then fell ill again, and suicidal, and even lost his speech. He was never again his old self. The Hamilton family looked after him quietly at their estates in Lanarkshire, including here at Craignethan Castle, for the next 40 years, until his death in 1609. He was stripped of his titles, and it was his younger brother, John, who became the next head of the Hamilton family. Here's another portrait of John. He was eventually an important supporter and friend of Mary's son, King James VI, hosting him several times at Kinneil House. It was King James who then also became King James I of England as well, and rewarded Lord John Hamilton with the title of First Marquis of Hamilton. So concludes the sad story of the third Earl of Arran, who, if fate had dealt a different hand, could have been a King of Scotland and possible husband of Queen Elizabeth of England, but who instead ended his life in insanity. We cannot know if the print of him made long after his death is a true likeness, but this epitaph appears at the bottom in French, written by an unknown hand. Mon cœur je laisse prendre au charme de Marie, et le trône pour moi n'avoir rien de trop grand. Le sort qui ne veut pas qu'un doux aimant nous lie, là fit trop catholique, ou moi trop protestant. I let my heart be taken by the charms of Mary, and the throne would not have been too much for me. But fate, which did not want us gently bound together, made her too Catholic, or me too Protestant.